right, here we go. Special edition of KnicksFanTV, CP The Fanchise here. Special guest with us today. She is a legend in the sports media game, celebrating 30 years at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Linda Cohn joins us today. Linda, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Hey, CP, thanks for having me. Kudos to you and your success with this amazing platform you created. I'm glad to be a small part of it, at least on this day.
No question. And as we said before we started recording, you're someone who I watched from Sports Center, middle school days on down. How do you reflect on 30 years, the most sports centers and, 30 years covering all different sports? How do you reflect on that?
Yeah, as it's going on, that old cliche, enjoy the journey. I mean, who enjoys the journey? Not me, not a New Yorker. That's not in my DNA. So I never thought about what I was like adding up, whether it's number of sports centers I hosted or the years that have gone by. One of the so many things that I'm most proud of, and probably the first two, one that I, stopped and smelled the roses when it came to the balancing act of having a family. I have two grown children, and being a mom was so significant and important to me to kind of slow me down. Again, getting back to that New York mentality that we're all at. We're like, what can I do next? What, and I'm like, it took me, I had kids. I started having kids when I was 31. I have two amazing grown children. But the point is that was significant. And the other thing, when I look back on the 30 years, is that how I impacted, people like you, for instance, right? To do their own thing, to create, not just wait for something to happen. And your love of sports and your passion of sports. And, when you're in kindergarten to middle school and you're watching me before you got the bus. And all the young women that have entered this industry, young women that have reached out to me, said the same thing. They grew up with me, they watch Sports Center. And just by seeing me on a nightly basis or a morning basis, whenever the heck I was on, my schedule changed a lot. They had belief then that women can do this and they could do it for a living and not just pass through. So those, just off the top of my head, that's what I think of when I think about being, and the significance of one place too. When I look back, I don't realize it, but people have been saying, do you realize just the other aspect of this, that you were in one place for 30 years? That just doesn't happen anymore.
Not at all. Not at all. Do you remember your first show? Do you remember what that was like?
Oh yeah, it's like well documented and it's out there. And I actually made a fun video. Actually, I didn't make it, but the LA Sports Center crew made it. It was on July 11th, 1992, when I worked with Chris Myers. I think it was a 2 a.m. Eastern Saturday night edition, and early on in my career, and which was great because actually it was great for me and really honed my skills. Doing those late highlight shows were amazing, just because it was all highlights. Back in the day, there was no like this talking heads. Let's bring on this person to tell what they think about this trade or what. We just were like highlights. Let's go, and that was what's so cool and was cool about doing that show. Back in the day, early sports centers, because it was highlight driven. I know the world has changed. Social media changed it. iPhones changed it, all that, and totally get that. And you got to move on in life. But that was a fun time to be a part of Sports Center. So it was with Chris Myers. I bet you I lead in the category as, Linda Cohn has had the most Sports Center co-hosts too. I mean, I had to have had more than anybody.
Did you, when you first started, it's 1992, did you feel like you had to kind of earn your respect? I mean, this is a male-driven industry still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you feel like, there was pressure on you to kind of live up to expectations?
Absolutely. And I'm not here going, crying about it. No, I think that helped me be better. I've always had the mentality, even to this day, still hosting Sports Center, make believe someone's watching you for the very first time and you have to win them over. I have not lost that mentality. It's what I had from the beginning in 1992 when I started ESPN. And I think all, young people like yourself, I'm sure, has adopted that as well, because, you're trying to win people over. You're always trying to prove that, hey, I belong here. I know what I'm talking about. And, you're going to be informed and entertained. Let's go have fun. And so that's always been, like my mission statement. And so I think that's really significant, never to rest on your laurels. And again, it comes back to what I talked about earlier. Don't expect anyone to just give you something or give you primary spots, on Sports Center or other shows, because that never happened to me. I feel like everything I gotten, it was my, connecting with the fan that really, helped me, be in a certain spot. But sometimes, this, you don't always get what you want, like the old Rolling Stone song. You don't always get what you want. I wanted to do more NFL. Doing NHL now, which is great with Sports Center. And thank God, they have the hockey back. But I wanted to do more bigger events. Did that always happen? No, it didn't. Am I going to whine about it? No. So it was a different world back then. I'm grateful and still am for every opportunity I had at ESPN and still have. And that's how you have to live your life and live this career. Else you're always going to be sad. You're always going to be disappointed. If you expect people to act the way you think they should, you'll always be disappointed.
Yeah, no question. I agree with that 100%. And the advice that you laid out there, you never know who's watching. It's something that I definitely subscribe to. One of my old partners, when I was, moving this show along, one time we were walking into the garden and we were talking about just content strategy going forward. And that's what I said to him. I said, we got to stay on video, stay on YouTube, because you just never know who's watching. So let's continue to improve on our craft, improve our, presentation, everything, because you just never know. And because of that, it's opened up a lot of doors for me. So it's big time advice.
Great. Fantastic. I love to hear that. That's awesome.
You mentioned the number of co-hosts that you worked with. Is there one in particular who you feel like you worked with best or had the best chemistry with?
I get that question a lot, and I don't blame you for asking it because I've worked with so many people. But I would say this, you always have some that where you have, the more you work with that person, the more, that person knows your chemistry, your ins and out. Currently, like, I work a lot with Neil Everett. He and I are fun. We're from that same age group. We just kid around. We both love music as well as sports, and we don't take anything too seriously. We just have laughs. But back in the day, I love working with Stuart Scott. The late great Stuart Scott would have been 57 years old the other day. Heartbreaking, continues to be heartbreaking. But we had so much fun, together when we did those shows. I've run out of words to describe what that was like. And I was like, we both had mutual respect for each other and what we do and who we impact. And I think that came across through the screen. Other people that I work with that I just love to laugh with, back in the day, Kenny Mayne made me laugh. I just had to do was look at him, or I would be reading something on camera, and he'd just look at me, and you'd see him out of his peripheral vision, and you're like, how do I not crack up right now on live TV? And yet you made all these facial expressions that I don't even know if I can make again, but he made me do that. But the key for a great Sports Center or a great show, and you can attest to this, is if you come out of it like thinking, oh my God, that was fun. That was great. That was worth everything. That was worth me being up late or doing this or doing that or preparing the way I did. Then that's a win, whoever you're co-hosted with. So I think that is the secret to the success.
You mentioned the late, great Stuart Scott. What I feel like his impact on this industry is you see a lot of personalities now in this industry. And I feel like with Stuart Scott, he made it okay to really be himself and bring his who he was out in front of that camera. Would you agree on that?
Oh, that's so true. That's so great. And that was a time, remember, when we weren't allowed to have personality. I mean, Stuart was in the forefront of that. And because I'll tell you, being a woman in a man's world, I was afraid to go boo. Like, I was like, uh-oh, someone's not going to like this, whether it's someone in my own company, a colleague, or, the average fan from South Dakota who is still getting used to the fact that a woman is giving her sports. No offense to South Dakota, but you know what I'm saying, type of thing. So Stuart comes on and is himself. And I always say this when I do speaking engagements and talk to young people. being, it's like a cliche now, but back in the day I used it. It's like, be your authentic self, be you. Never let anyone change who you are. Don't kind of carve yourself into a little box, a box that people think this is the way you're supposed to be. Stuart never did that. He burst through. He burst through with being himself. And so a lot of times another aspect of Stuart, and which then, I was like, wow, Stuart can do that. I'm going to start doing that. I'm not going to be afraid. And what I love, one of the things I loved about Stuart and his personality was the fact that he said, you know what? I'm a Tar Heel fan. I'm going to be a fan. I'm going to let people know I root for the Tar Heels. Like, not only root for them, but I'm passionate about them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to always bring that up. And me being a New York girl and the love of my teams, the Rangers, the Giants, the Knicks and the Mets, he gave me like, wow, well, Stuart's doing that with the Tar Heels. Okay, Linda over here, I'm going to let people know and kind of plant some seeds. So that's another aspect that people forget as well about Stuart. He started that trend, which, oh, by the way, thank God has never ended.
That's right. And what I like about you is that, you kept your New York accent. We have a very,
Yeah.
very strong accent, the way we enunciate certain things, but you always kept it authentic in that regard as well.
Yeah, I'm really proud to be a New Yorker. I was born in Manhattan in New York City. Sure, I was raised on Long Island, but the first 7 years I was in New York and then Queens. And then my parents moved all of us to Long Island. But that's what I love. And it's a funny story. Well, I went to Oswego State, a great SUNY school, great university right near Syracuse. And there was this amazing professor. His name, and I think he's still there, Fritz Mazier, great guy, worked in TV production. And I thought, oh my God, the only way I'm going to be able to be in this business, I have to lose my accent. So I asked him, I go, what do I have to do to lose my accent? Because I don't think anyone's going to hire me, other places outside of New York, and stuff to get your first job in New York. I mean, back in the day, there were no podcasts and things that you could create on your own and do stuff. There was some radio stations and there was a lot of TV stations where there was actually sportscasters who did sports, So anyway, he said to me, the only way you can lose it is open your mouth wider when you talk and slow down your speech. And when I first started, when I got a big break in Seattle and I worked for a CBS station doing sports, that was my big break before ESPN. I used that advice. And then some words would come out that I couldn't escape the New York accent. And while it was great advice, I decided my real self, when I'm off camera, I'm still going to have the accent. I'm still going to talk like this. So somehow I was able on camera, when that light went on, to do what he said, when I had to slow down my speech, open my mouth wider when I talk, you lose their accent. And I did that for like 95% of the words I uttered in Seattle on the air at Cairo TV. But then when I got to ESPN, slowly but surely, you know what? I let out more the New York accent, and now here you go, take it or leave it, and I'm still there. So that's another situation where at least times have changed, where people want you to be yourself. And the other thing I want to bring up, which, because people always ask me, how do you explain your longevity and you're still making an impact? Like I say, nothing's changed. Meaning, when I first started, I always wanted to connect to the fan. Not, and it helped out that, I was athlete friendly as well. But my importance was connecting to the fan, because I am a fan first, and I always have been, and I always will be. And I always stick up for the players I love and stick up for the teams I love. And sometimes I'm hard on the teams I love. So the teams actually think I can't stand them, which cracks me up. That happened with a Met thing many years ago with the Mets. Over a highlight, I was ripping, like, they didn't score any runs for their pitchers. It was like, this is now 8 straight games where the Mets, they barely can average more than, and sadly, not much has changed, by the way, with their offensive production.
Right.
But I had like Mets PR. A lot of the players were not happy with what I was saying, and they had no idea that actually I'm a Met fan.
Right.
So I put fans first, and always have done when I did the highlights, because I knew they were just like me.
And that's why I really appreciate this conversation, because I started this platform by being fan first and wanting to connect with the fans and have their voices be heard. And it's a very rewarding and valuable experience, you know, the impact that you have on fans. And you started in this industry from sports radio, right? You were actually, you know, a pioneer in sports talk radio. So talk a little bit about that and how that's influenced your career.
Yeah, you know, back in the day, they actually didn't have me as a role in sports talk radio. So we're talking, this is before I was actually worked for a blink of the eye at the Fan, you know, WFAN, which we all love because they were like, you know, mind blowing, obviously, with Mike and the Mad Dog and everything when they came onto this planet. But before that, before sports talk radio, and I know I'm dating myself, but who cares? You can just Google me, find out all I am. But, you know, mid 80s, I was doing radio and I was doing it for WCBS AM 88, News Radio 88, because there was no sports talk. And I was doing updates, weekend overnights. And, you know, I would come in late, it's no traffic, but I was living in Queens at the time. I would drive into the studio on West 52nd Street, CBS, at, you know, all hours when we didn't have to look behind our back because we thought we were going to get, you know, something bad was going to happen. I actually just drove in, no big deal, and, you know, spent 3 hours there after all the games were over. And I recorded 3 different, you know, sports reports of the night in action. And they posted all overnight and in the morning on WCBS. And that gave me a great start. I did have an opportunity, a very small one, to do some sports talk at WFAN before I got the job in Seattle. But back then I wasn't really good at it because I wasn't being myself. You see, I wasn't like talking like a fan, like the people that were listening, like, you know, I was like, oh my God, what should I say? There's going to be dead air. I better have some facts. I better write some stuff down. That's not good sports talk radio, you know? And so I wasn't great at it. So I did the TV in Seattle, got to ESPN, did some ESPN radio stuff, but my biggest break on the radio side was when Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio hired me to do filling in for the dog, you know, who we all love. And of course, for Pat McAfee and other fill-in opportunities. And it's been great because for the last 5 years doing Mad Dog Radio on Sirius XM, I've been able to, you know, be me, be the fan, be, you know, broadcast from, you know, make jokes about how I'm president of the Eli Manning fan club, you know, stuff like that, you know, and like nobody will push back on me. And Eli doesn't even know that. So, you know, the whole kind of thing and just having fun. And so it's such a great thing. So, but radio and, you know, and if they had podcasts back then, I would have done that because I think what you're doing makes you better in all other platforms. So when I was doing sports talk radio that made me better. That made me a better Sports Center anchor as well, because that was more of like the ad libbing and blah, blah, blah. And just, you know, more of just the authentic Linda.
We're talking to the legendary Linda Cohn, celebrating 30 years at ESPN. You know, prepping for a show on Sports Center. I have a lot of friends that went through the production assistant program, some that are still there. So I understand that the preparation that it takes to put on a show. Has there been a time, or can you tell me about a time when you had to kind of deviate from the lead or deviate from a plan and break some news?
Oh yeah, that's happened. Oh, I can't even begin to tell you how many times that's happened. And that's one of the aspects of doing Sports Center that's still exciting, because some people ask me, like, oh, you know, isn't it tough doing the same thing all the time? I go, I'm talking sports. It's never the same all the time. And so, you know, when I think about breaking news, I think the most recent that I can remember, before we deal with now with NBA free agency, where guys like Kevin Durant, who I love, but with 4 years left on his contract, wants out of Brooklyn, you know, that kind of thing. Remember when Kawhi Leonard, right after the whole Raptors championship, and everyone was like, where's Kawhi gonna go? So I was doing a show in LA with my buddy Stan Verrett, and it was like we were ready to get the hell out of there. It was like 11:15, all the games were over, this and that, blah, blah, blah. It was like in July, so you're only waiting for like a late Dodger or Angel game to finish, because it's the show of record, the show we do out here in LA. So it's like 11:15 LA time, so 2:15 Eastern time. And then typical Kawhi, who's Mr. Quiet, I don't need a big thing, you know, whatever. It was like breaking news, like Adrian Wojnarowski comes on or whatever, or just there's a tweet or something. And it's Kawhi's like, I've decided to go to the Clippers, like at 11:15 local time, you know, in LA. And he's like, I'm taking Paul George with me. So here's Stan and I were like ready to leave. We're waiting for, you know, we're basically almost done doing the closes, as we like to say. And this happens. And so everyone and their grandmother is like, we're like, oh, let's bring in Michael Wilbon. Let's bring in Stephen A. Smith. Let's bring in, you name it. We got opinions on everyone. Let's bring in Woj. And it was like a whole thing. And, well, okay, what about the Lakers now? Ramona, what do you got about the Lakers?
Right.
So that was like, and then Stan and I walked off the set 2 hours later. It was close to like, 3 Eastern time, like 3:30 Eastern, and local time was like close to 1, something like that, 1:30, somewhere around that, LA time. And we're like, you know what? That was fun. That was cool to be on, because we were the only game in town on live when this amazing, and our people, meaning our sports fans, this big, huge story. And it was a positive story. It wasn't like, thank God, someone dying, which I've been involved in shows like that. So that's why I wanted to bring up the positive story of breaking news, with that. And it was an LA story, obviously, involving the Clippers for a change, and not the Lakers. But of course, we had to get Laker feedback and Laker reaction.
For sure. Talking about scramble on the fly. Now, you're celebrating 30 years at ESPN, and this is also in the backdrop of 50 years of celebrating Title IX. And you also have a Title IX program series on Sirius XM. Talk about the impact of this legislation that it had on your life coming up in sports.
Yeah, you don't even think about stuff like that, because you just keep pushing. You're like, I love playing hockey. I played hockey. I was a goalie. I played with boys. That was the only leagues that let me in. There were no girls, maybe 2 other women, young women, when I was a teenager. So I had to play with boys a hell of a lot younger. Like, I was 14 when I started playing hockey. And I could only play with 8-year-old boys. And then I graduated 12-year-old boys because I was a good goalie. And then I made my high school team, Newfield High School in Selden, my senior year. I made the boys team, as a backup goalie. Still started about 8 games, but it was still pretty cool. I always say better than the senior prom, because I didn't go to the senior prom because I couldn't go with the guys I wanted to go, which were obviously, the quarterback and the star player on the hockey team that I was a teammate with. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay home and watch a game with my dad, if I can't go with a guy I want to go with. But so then, then I decided, when I went to college at Oswego State, they had a women's team. It was a club team, but it was really just starting out. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go there. And I had other great stuff, communications, broadcasting, stuff like that, great sunsets. But I had a women's hockey team. First time I played with women there. And again, you don't think about what it means to actually, wow, I'm playing with other women, which was really cool. But it meant a lot. So on that special you referred to, which you can get on demand still on Sirius XM, the Title IX special, they brought in one of my former teammates from Oswego State. She was so great. She still is. I mean, she played defense. She was always there. Great skater. Because a lot of the women that I played with were not like how Ann was. Ann Potter Collins is her name. And anyway, we had an interview about Title IX and what it meant, and us just playing hockey and all that. So it was really cool. And I just, look at, again, sounds like a line from an old Matchbox 20 song. Look how far we've come. But it's really kind of true. I mean, yes, should there be better, more things, but we're getting there. We're on the right path. And it's fantastic, because you look at, and we have to thank, the Queen, Billie Jean King, for being just who she is. When I was growing up, I didn't have these kind of glasses. I had really thick glasses, and I played tennis before I played hockey. And Billie Jean was like my idol, because she's a woman with glasses, being a professional tennis player, center court and all that. And she was like one of my idols growing up. So if it wasn't for her, and now look at her, I mean, she's part Dodgers owner and all these other things she's accomplished. So if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, no question. And now, so, you're starting off in high school, a woman playing goalie for a men's team. And then later on, again, a woman in sports industry, which is a male dominated industry. I have to assume that experience that you went through playing at the high school level, I'm sure there was some adversity there that kind of helped you in your career.
It sure did. It was like, what great preparation for me, dealing with the whispers behind my back of like, what's she doing? That. And like, why is she playing with my son? Type of thing. And she's got is that really a girl behind there? Ponytail out of her goalie mask behind, I heard it all, and I had to block out the noise. I mean, I really did. I learned to do that. And so when I started doing, being a sportscaster, TV, when, and radio before that, but Same kind of thing, sure, early on we didn't have social media, but believe it or not, would you believe the ESPN switchboard, all you had to do was find out the main number. They would get me right to my voicemail. So those early sports centers, the first few years, not just the first week, the first few years of me doing Sports Center at ESPN, the voicemails I would get were not pretty, and you would think it would be all from guys, but no, there were some women, like old moms, saying, "What are you doing there talking to my son about sports? You're standing up and you're wearing a skirt." I mean, like some of them was really disturbing. I remember driving home from work, doing these late night sports centers, really questioning what is going on, and calling my mom late at night, who lived in Florida at the time, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. I was really upset. And she'd be like, "Who cares?" My dad would, do his fun, how should I say? My dad would say, like, his favorite curse word, like F them, you know what I mean? All the time to me, to just like totally block it out. And it really did. That's what I did. I'm not saying I'm a robot and it didn't get to me. Sometimes even before social media, and then social media happened. And that's why I tell young people all the time, even when social media first came out, like in 2009, I know I joined Twitter in 2009. I was one of the early ones. But I say to them, and my daughter, who's grown, but she had said this to me years earlier. She's like, "I don't care if all of your mentions are great. Don't get too high on the mentions and don't get too low on the mentions. Treat them all the same, like don't put any stock into them."
Right.
Because you don't know where that's coming from. You don't know if, what the person is about, and you just let it go.
Don't give it any energy. That's great.
Yeah.
Definitely great advice, especially in this climate. We're talking to the legendary Linda Cohn, celebrating 30 years at ESPN. All right, Linda, let's get into some of our teams here, because this is
okay. Yeah, let's end strong.
Let's end strong. So on these Knicks,
yes,
we're in the backdrop of a potential Donovan Mitchell trade.
I
have
hope.
Jalen Brunson coming in. How do you feel about the state of the franchise right now?
Yeah, I love players that want to be on the Knicks. Like, I don't care if they're not elite, but Jalen Brunson wanted to be a New York Knickerbocker. Okay, I'm in Jalen. Okay, I know the numbers, I know who you played with the Mavs. And yeah, I have a little pause and about whether you're going to put up those same numbers with the Knicks. For the obvious reason, because that person's not here with the Knicks, so Luka's not there. But the thing is, I believe in players that want to be here. Now, the Donovan Mitchell, my God, 3-time All-Star, what is he, 25 years old? I mean, can you imagine if Leon Rose and company can somehow pull off a miracle legally and get him in here? Without breaking any NBA rules, and all these other teams like filing petitions, the Knicks did this wrong, this should not be allowed. Which, you're hearing all this scuttlebutt, about Brunson and all these kind of things. I mean, really, don't you other 29 teams have something else better to do than please, pity the Knicks, let us. So, we're all fans, right? So we hope, but I can't even, I will be jumping for joy. I don't care who do you have to get rid of to get Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean, because then we'll be like, wow, because we look as Knicks fans, look at Atlanta, they have Trae Young, and look at Memphis with John Moran, and we need one of these young guys,
Yeah, we need a guy. And at 25 years old, you have to take a swing. And I think with bringing in Brunson here, they're trying to compete. Some fans would say, well, they need to be playing for the lottery. They're in no man's land. But I think
I'm sick of that. I'm sick of that strategy. That hasn't worked.
Let's get the guy, right?
Why not? Right. And by the way, we have no proof. We have no guarantee that they'll pick the right guy.
Hey, history has shown that.
Yes.
History has definitely shown us that. So you're definitely right on that. Now, earlier this week, there was a little bit of controversy in the Brunson press conference because the media was not allowed in. How did you feel about that?
That's not good. He's got to get used to the New York's media, right? And sadly, MSG sometimes shakes, the people that run it and run these teams, because I know from the Rangers as well, they kind of set up their own rules. I don't know what that's about, so it's really tough for me to comment, but it's dumb. I mean, you can structure that press conference the way you want. Can you let everyone in? This is not even, it's not even a COVID thing, right? Can't play, it's a COVID
Yeah,
thing.
no,
Like,
it's in front of a ton of fans. All the season
I
tickets.
know, exactly. Isn't it, it's bad PR. It's bad PR, and the Knicks need good PR. They constantly do until they get a consistent winning product on the court. So I had my head shaking. I could not believe that when I saw that.
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
Yeah, they certainly do it to themselves. The only thing I could think of was that with the Mitchell stuff still being out there and with the tampering investigation going on, maybe they didn't want to put him on the spot, to be.
But doesn't that raise more? I know, but doesn't that raise more eyebrows?
That's fair.
There's a way to do that, right? There's just a way. Like if they're all like a barrage of questions are toward that, PR dude's got to stand up and say, "Listen, we're here to celebrate that Jalen Brunson is here now. All that other stuff will be figured out." There are ways to do it. I just don't understand it.
Who's your favorite Knick of all time?
Oh, well, it has to be, and again, I'm dating myself, but who cares? Walt Frazier. Quick little story. The Knicks are the first professional sports team I loved with my dad. So, because I was a youngster, and who would have thought that the 72-73 Knicks would be the last championship team? When I was a little girl, I never thought that was going to happen. But funny story, back in the day, when they won that championship, I was growing up on Long Island then, okay? And there was this new mall. It's called the Smith Haven Mall. I think it still exists. It's in Lake Grove, okay? And what they did was 3 New York Knicks. There was Walt Clyde Frazier, there was Dave DeBusschere, and Willis Reed. They were invited to the mall, and it was a 3-pronged mall, right? You know how malls are like, okay, Macy's is here, this store's here, this store's there. So they set up stages for each end of the mall. And I told my dad took me, I wanted to see, of all the 3 dudes, Dave DeBusschere, Walt Frazier, and Willis Reed, I wanted to see Walt Frazier. And I, as a little girl, I must have been 8 or 9, I snuck into the front. And you know how, and listen, you're young, but there's going to be a time when you're going to forget a lot of things. You're going to be shocked at what you remember. So I remember as a 9-year-old girl, whatever it was, 10-year-old girl, I remember being in the front and Walt Frazier looking at the crowd that gathered around the stage, like in front of Macy's or whatever, and he bent down and looked at me and said, "Wow," like that. I remember that like as it was yesterday. And it was really cool. One time I had an opportunity later on, I was already at ESPN, might have been though like 20 years ago, where my path crossed with, Clyde Frazier. And I said, "I got to tell you this story." And I told him that exact story, and he was like, "That is amazing." I think he even gave me another wow.
Yeah.
I mean, for me to share that story, it's like when someone shares a story about like meeting me, like, not that level, but you know what I mean, where you forget. And he's like, "I think I remember going to that mall, blah, blah, blah." So that he will always be my favorite. Number 10, Walt Clyde Frazier.
Clyde is a national treasure. I have the number 10 jersey behind me. You got to
nice, and that's cool. You're right. Now I'm just noticing that. That's sweet.
Clyde is the best. He's absolutely a treasure. Now I follow the Knicks full time, NBA full time, football. I follow the Giants full time. So once those seasons are over or near the playoffs, and obviously with the Knicks there are no playoffs, I get into bandwagon Ranger mode. So I looked at this whole series for the Rangers, this whole playoff run, and I liked what I saw.
Yeah.
I liked what I saw. First off, it's very rare in sports. You look at football, you look at Favre to Rodgers. Basketball is very difficult, but Lakers seem to always win every generation. But in hockey, going from, a great goalie in Lundqvist to Shesterkin, who I was very impressed with, it doesn't seem to happen that often, but the Rangers seem like they really have a guy there in Shesterkin.
Yeah, I mean, unlike the Knicks, the Rangers actually know how to draft. I know it's prior administration.
That one, right? Can't play
right, prior administrations, but still, they picked the right guy. It is rare. You're absolutely right. Ranger fans are so lucky and blessed. And Igor Shesterkin, I got to meet him after I was at Game 2 as a fan, because that is the way I like to see games. People always ask me, "Oh, Linda, what was the greatest thing you ever covered?" I go, "The greatest thing I ever covered was not covering." When I
It's not working. Not working.
when I go as a fan, I can,
Yeah.
wear the jersey, wear the hat, blah, blah, blah. So I stayed after, and I actually got to meet Igor Shesterkin. He didn't speak much English, and he doesn't know what a crazy Ranger fan I am. But I got a picture with him and everything. But the bottom line is this Ranger group was easy to root for. People who are not all in on hockey, maybe just jumped on the wagon, during the playoffs, which is totally cool. Whatever you can do to make your fan base bigger, who cares? How big a fan this person is or this person is. But they're a fun group. And he is the face of their franchise now. There is no question that Igor Shesterkin is the guy, but he has always said, and he had that big learning experience, regarding when he was shelled by the Penguins, and everyone liked to bring that up and like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And how did he respond? And he has a great goalie coach in Benoit Allaire, and he helped him get through that psychologically. So just, remember, when Pittsburgh and those fans were giving the derisive Igor chants, Igor, Benoit Allaire told Igor Shesterkin, think of that as a compliment. They're saying your name, and all that. He just kind of like turned the whole tables on it. And then from that time on, he was great, and he already had pocketed the Vezina Trophy for best goalie. So yeah, he is. We'll see how Andre Vasilevsky bounces back for the Lightning. But maybe the tables are about to turn, and the mantle of best goalie in the National Hockey League, it's getting closer and closer now.
I like where things are headed, and hopefully they can capitalize on that run, learn from it, and build on top of it. The New York Football Giants, Linda.
Yes. Yeah. Here's the game. I mean, are you ready for another last place finish? I know they changed the head coach. Okay. Daniel Jones is not Josh Allen. I'm not saying Josh Allen is, Tom Brady, right? Yeah. But he's not Daniel Jones. And no offense to Daniel Jones, I have been anti-Daniel Jones since the day he was drafted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Here's the thing. He's a nice guy. I don't want a nice guy. Eli was a nice guy, did great things in the community, but when he played his best? In the Super Bowl and in the postseason. You know how he got there? He at least got them in there. And he never complained and whined. Not that Daniel Jones is complaining and whining, but somehow the supporting cast, these people that are apologists for Daniel Jones, Linda, you had no offensive line. Hey, Linda, you had no targets. Each year, the management, whoever was running the Giants, would help Daniel Jones out, getting the things that all his people were complaining about. Guess what happened? Same result. Plus, he gets hurt too much. But it's just the guy he'll make a nice backup somewhere someday. I don't want him. Now, here's the other problem. The last couple of years, first of all, he pushed Eli out of his starting role, which bothered me. He didn't do it, but the idiots. I didn't like how they handled it. I didn't like exactly. Awful. Yeah. Piss poor. Ben McAdoo and company go just like morons. Okay. Here's the other thing. And then he's out, and then so he wins a couple of games. Big deal. But I have been outspoken against this guy. I forgot what I was going to say because it was damn good. But I know. The protection around him, the bubble, not the protection offensive line. The management of the Giants, whoever is GM, whoever is owner, whatever it is, would only bring in backup quarterbacks that are not threatening. No offense to Colt McCoy. Mike Glennon was even worse than Colt McCoy.
Horrendous. He was
horrendous. So you're dealing with a guy in Daniel Jones, insecure, so he's not threatened. And that was the illusion. So he was like, he's fine. Now they bring in Tyrod Taylor, who I love and like, but the guy's going to get hurt. But I'd feel more comfortable with Tyrod Taylor under center. Listen, I was looking for, perfect. Here's the thing. It's going to be this is hard for me and you probably. We root for the Giants. We want them to win, but I can't root for Daniel Jones. I want him out. So I am a torn Giants fan. And by the way, half of our fan base is like, apologists for Daniel Jones. Oh, Linda, you don't know what you're talking about. He hasn't had enough. I'm sick of that. Sick of that narrative. I don't want him starting this year. I don't wish anything bad. But I really wish we had someone come in like a Jimmy G, a Baker Mayfield. Seriously,
Yeah.
And, Baker's with Carolina, but I would have welcomed Baker with open arms because guess what? He's not Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a big believer in him. The fumbling issue, not really accurate. I didn't really see them why they would waste that draft pick on when we needed pass rush. They haven't built the trench as well. We'll see. The whole Saquon thing has been kind of bothering me as well. Let's see what Dable and Schoen have in store, and hopefully, the season won't be over by week.
Yes, and let me just say one more thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the Giants get off to a miraculous great start behind Daniel Jones and the moves and the inspiration that maybe Brian Dable has shared, being a real head coach or being a guy that has the potential to be a real head coach, then I'll have an open mind. But I will not be a hypocrite. I still will not believe that Daniel Jones is our future to get back to a Super Bowl.
We're talking to Linda Cohn, celebrating 30 years at ESPN. Couple more quick questions for you, Linda. You're out on the West Coast, but a New Yorker by way of Long Island. Is there a particular place or restaurant that you miss when you go out there and you want to come home and you visit and you frequent?
Well, when I went back, to see Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final, Rangers Tampa. Mm-hmm. So I was back there a couple months ago. I stumbled on this amazing bagel place. See that, I'm a New York girl, I like the bagels, my parents would always come home from the bakery, bring bagels, or the bagel place, or H&H bagels and all this kind of, Liberty Bagels. Now, what's cool about Liberty Bagels, I can't tell you the address, just look it up.
Yeah.
That's where they have like unbelievably flavored cream cheese. I remember I had some different colors, like rainbow colored bagels. I mean, I just thought it was pretty, so I'm like, I'll have the Oreo flavored cream cheese on the rainbow colored bagel because it's very decorative.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
So that is now my, I am there. And also another thing is just going to great, delis. So what you don't have in LA, unless in certain areas where I don't live. I live in the South Bay. So, I'm not in, wherever. Well, I don't know, but I'm not even going to mention a town. But the point is this. So I like the New York stuff that we associate with New York are the great, Jewish delis and the great bagels. So when I go back, those are, and great Chinese food. I went when I went with my brother, we went to Chinatown.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we had an amazing meal at it was still open at midnight. We showed up. We had an amazing meal in Chinatown, and of course, Little Italy. So these are the kind of places, whether it's the Jewish deli, the bagel place, Little Italy, and Chinatown, all on my list when I go back to New York, and nothing out here. They try. But doesn't equate to what we can get in New York.
Yeah, well said. Definitely can't get good bagels or pizza out on the West Coast.
Yeah, pizza too. Yes, pizza, right.
I do have a nice Chinese restaurant out in LA in Chinatown. It's called Yang Chow's. I'm giving them free promotion. They haven't sponsored the show yet, but if you're ever in LA, go to Chinatown, Yang Chow's. I actually shot some content there as well with fellow Knicks fans out in the West Coast.
Well, you need, when you post this podcast, you add them. I did that when I went to Liberty Bagels. They didn't know me from Adam. I didn't even, now they follow me. And now I was like, I was not an influencer, right? I just like their stuff, so I tagged them. So maybe you'll get that sponsor. So do tag Liberty Bagels too.
Absolutely.
Tell them Linda Cohn told you too.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned influencers. There's a lot of people popping up in the game, a lot of content creators, everyone's, wants to get in the sports media industry. We talked about advice earlier about you never know who's watching. Any other advice for aspiring sports media professionals, content creators in this, it's very saturated right now.
It is.
Any advice?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know I've already shared being authentic. Don't expect anybody to hand you anything. You have to create stuff. I forgot anything else I said, but I think be grateful. And why do I say be grateful? Because the obvious reason why, but because you're living in a day, you're starting out in this business where we have all these things. Yes, it's saturated. Yes, everyone and their grandmother has a podcast. Yes, anyone can go and get a YouTube channel, and if they figure out how to do it. Yes, all of this stuff. But we didn't have that back in the day. The only way I got seen when I got that Seattle job, I would make a VHS tape, a videotape of and then I would send it mail, like real mail, like the post office, to news directors that run TV stations.
Yeah.
So be grateful that you have these other platforms and opportunities to get seen. And you had the LinkedIn, which is big, you know, and you know, I've had a lot of people, and it's been great because I enjoy sharing advice like to you, but I've gotten on the phone with people, young women, young men, talking about, you know, secrets to success. What can they do? And I spoke with someone yesterday that I met via LinkedIn. She reached out to me, and first thing I said to her, I was like, first of all, good job by you to reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
You got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Maybe I respond, maybe I don't. I responded, and we had a 45-minute chat because she's being a senior in college at the University of Penn. And I was talking to her about her, and she's already done all these things while in college for her resume, you know, interning, this, that, volunteering to be a runner at an Atlanta event, you know, all these different things. It was a Hawks Sixers game that she volunteered to be a runner for ESPN because she reached out to someone on LinkedIn who knew somebody that needed somebody at the last minute in Philly. You just never know. And I always say this, and this is the true story, and I always quote them. This is my favorite quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Sometimes you have to take that first step without seeing the entire staircase. That resonated with me decades ago when I was volunteering to cover the New York Islanders. Even though I hated the Islanders growing up because I was a Rangers fan, I volunteered when I was doing news updates in my first job at WALK Radio in Patchogue, Long Island. I said, can you just pay for $10 for my gas? Because it was an hour each way to the Coliseum. But I volunteered, and that opened doors for me. And that's how I got the freelance job at WCBS AM. Ed Ingles, the late great Ed Ingles, who used to be the sports director there, saw me cover Islander games, sent me to the Mets games, sent me to the US Open, and then hired me to do, you know, those sports updates I told you about. So that to me is just gold, mint advice that has not changed throughout the decades.
Very well said. And lastly, what's next for you? You know, 30 years at ESPN, you have your shows on ESPN Plus, you're still doing Sports Center, you're filling in on Mad Dog Radio, you have the Title IX series. Is there anything left for you to do? Anything that's on your bucket list, or what's next for you?
Well, you know, there's something that could be in the works. I'm hoping, we'll see if it works. You know, I'd love to do a podcast with my son. My son, Dan, is all NFL all the time. We both love the NFL. We both love Tom Brady, believe it or not. And yeah, I love Eli Manning. My son has forgiven me because he was at that second Giants. I took him and we got tickets at the very last minute to see the second Eli beating Tom Brady Super Bowl.
Classic.
And he was in shock, you know, because he grew up in Connecticut. So he's a big Patriots fan. And you know, I still root for Brady with Buccaneers, very excited for what he does, and you know, Mr. Entrepreneur as well. But what else do I want to do? I would love to cover it. I would love to be sidelines for a Super Bowl, even if it's on radio. I don't care. I would love to do something like that. That would be really exciting to do. You know, and you know, I have the freedom where maybe I could do that with another radio network. I would like to do that. I'd like to do more hockey games in between the benches. I did about 10 of them during the first year at ESPN. I'd like to do more, and I'd like to show off and express my analysis during these games, because I think that's one area of growth for women that have become analysts. We look at Doris Burke for one,
for sure,
who had just, you know, she's amazing. She's amazing as an analyst, you know, and I had told her years ago, and, you know, I think she remembers this, when she was doing sideline reporting for Duke basketball, men's basketball. I go, there's going to be a time when you are in the booth, because your knowledge, you're better, you know, there's more to you than a sideline reporter at a Duke basketball game, you know. And there she was, you know. Now we've got accustomed, and we look for Doris at NBA games in the booth, you know, courtside. So that's great. So those are the kind of things I would like doing. But you know what? We all have to live in the moment and enjoy what's going on now. And that's what has helped me in my longevity of not looking about what I don't have, but what I have at the moment, and, you know, still growing. And that's what I'd like to do.
Perfect ending to this interview, Linda. I definitely appreciate the time. 30 years in the game. That's a tremendous accomplishment. And you know, you've been a trailblazer in this industry. I definitely appreciate the advice and the gems that you dropped here. Hopefully better luck for our Knicks and Giants and Rangers. And hopefully we can have another conversation down the road. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, when the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell and they're winning games, okay, and even if they're not, absolutely, and continued success for you and this great platform.
Thank you. You as well, Linda. Thanks again.
Awesome.